Whatever you do, don't speak French. This happened in school when I was around 15. It was in a French-speaking region and my English class had a very strict but somewhat sassy teacher, Miss Jones. The one golden rule was no French. You had to speak in English no matter what, except emergencies, of course. Miss Jones wasn't messing around, but she did have a sense of humor. For example, one day during recess, someone wrote on the board, "Miss Jones is a beach." When she saw it, she started screaming, "What is wrong with you? I'm not a beach, I'm a bitch." Then she spelled correctly the word and wrote it on the board. She added, "Besides, it's not a bad thing. It stands for babe in total control of herself." One day in class, Miss Jones mentioned war and a student didn't know what that word meant, so Miss Jones started explaining it in English. The student doesn't get it. Other students pitch in, still in English, to no results. This goes on for some time. I got fed up and say, "This is a waste of time. Can we just translate the word in French and move on?" Miss Jones answers, "Well, if you're so smart, why don't you explain what it means? And no French." Alright, I start making pow-pow noises, explosions, imitating warplanes, the whole deal. It takes 3 seconds for the student to yell, "I get it." What's up, guys? Welcome back to Storytime with Uncle Jon. Today we're taking a look at r/MaliciousCompliance. I took a couple of Spanish classes when I was in grade school, 7th and 8th grade, and then a little bit in high school, not too much, but sometimes you just need to kind of move on with things, get the translation done, because really just saying it over and over in a language that somebody doesn't understand is not going to do it. And OP, I guess, evidently did a perfect job of explaining himself without using pretty much any words. When I was a construction manager / construction superintendent, we had a lot of Latina people, from Mexico, Guatemala, Peru, different countries. And, all the dialects are different. I learned just enough Spanish to be dangerous, basically mostly one-word things. If I can name the object and kind of get my point across with my hands and a lot of goofy noises and things like that, with that one word, I can usually get my point across as to what I want to happen. And most of the guys were pretty happy with that, as long as, I could be concise with it. But, there was a lot of days standing out there on the construction site, sweat rolling off everybody. We're all trying to get work done, and I try to tell somebody to do something with the trash or, go grab a hammer or something like that. And yeah, I'm standing out there doing, it must have been a sight to behold. "So, you want me to get married?" Not my story, but I was present ages ago at the wedding in question. This young woman becomes pregnant with the partner with whom she lived. The Catholic mother takes a dim view of this and is probably a little afraid of what will people say. The mother therefore urges her daughter to get married and ends up threatening to disinherit her. So she organized her wedding. The civil marriage took place relatively normally, but once at the Catholic Church, she invited her zealous pastor uncle, with whom her mother no longer wanted to talk about faith, to give a mini preach in addition to that of the priest, who chose evangelical songs that obviously no one knew. At the exit of the church, I don't know how she managed to put this together, but she told me a few years later that she chose the priest specifically because of it. 2 police officers were waiting for the priest because he was under investigation for acts of the P word. After the photos, she arrived at the meal with the bottom of her wedding dress completely soiled. I even wonder if she served contaminated seafood because people at the parents' table ended up sick. She was not disinherited. And to edit, she's still happily married. I had a lot more questions after reading this than I did answers, so I went scrolling through the comments and found this from Gemini27. It's a couple of things. The mother wanted the wedding to present her daughter in the best possible light to reflect socially on the mother. In such things, there is a certain social expectation that the wedding dress will, visually, be the primary center of attention, at least visually, as it draws attention to the bride and is a singular item amidst the wedding decorations. It also, to some traditionalists, is a statement of the bride's purity. And with all that taken into account, great care is usually taken to keep it clean and pristine during the ceremony and any photos. Here, the bride deliberately soiled the dress so it would appear dirty at both the event and in the photos, embarrassing her mother on the day and in perpetuity, and making a potentially permanent reminder, via the photos, that the bride never wanted the wedding and was forced into it by the mother, thus ruining any enjoyment or satisfaction the mother might have been expecting to have in later years from looking at the photos. So basically, mom's a horrible person for basically blackmailing and browbeating her daughter into getting married. And the daughter didn't do much better because really, if she didn't want to get married, she shouldn't have got married. If you're talking about, being kicked out of the inheritance. So what? That tells me you're just looking for money and you really didn't care to begin with either. And neither one of you has a good relationship with the other. So yeah, whatever, man. And if she really did serve those people like spoiled seafood or something, screw that. I can see doing some little things to get digs in at your mom or somebody that's pissing you off. But yeah, this whole thing was just a cluster from the start. Dirty uniforms are fine. Then we're wearing them. For context, I'm working in a IC Engine Components Manufacturing, MNC Tier 1, company as a shift in charge for machine shop. And our uniform is white shirt and dark blue pants. In a machine shop environment, shirt will get dirty easily and company will provide only 2 shirts per year. We've raised concerns many times, and as a corporate culture, nothing has changed. One day I'm troubleshooting on a machine. One of the hydraulic lines got a leak and oil squirted all over. My shirt became soaked in oil. I have only 2 shirts, and the next day I asked the admin team for an extra pair. They've not seen the condition of my shirt and told me some oil stains is not an issue. You can still wear it, blah, blah, blah. And we can't provide additional shirts as we don't have the budget. Here's the malicious compliance. The following week, our CEO and managers from head office are coming in to visit, and the admin team announced to everyone to be disciplined. So me and my coworkers discussed and made a plan. On the day of the CEO visit, we came in with the dirtiest uniforms. All have heavy oil and grease stains. Some of them are not at all white due to the stains. One of the admin managers sees us and asks and made a fuss. I replied with, "Your team only told us oil stains in the uniforms, not at all a concern." He immediately called that person and we all got shirts within 5 minutes. So it sounds like it is important to the company, but for the local management team, they're trying to pad their bonuses by not spending more money on uniform shirts. Except when the CEO is going to show up and you're going to get ripped a new one as the manager for not supplying clean shirts to your mechanics. Gotcha. And who the F chose white? Who does that? I would never choose white for anything. I never wore white shirts doing carpentry because I knew they were going to get so stained and dirty just from being around lumber and nails and, that kind of stuff. We very rarely dealt with anything greasy. People are stupid. I don't know. Perverted radio station manager wants me to censor music? I worked at a prominent local radio station in the early 2000s. I had to program the broadcast and censor the music. It was a chump change job and I only worked a few hours a week. I could be on call though. My manager turned out to be a sleaze. He'd slapped the private parts of our lady staff members. I didn't like his behavior, so I decided to give his perverted mind some joy. I was going to move to New York City after graduating college. We played a lot of songs with cussing. I was told to censor all music on my very first day. On my final day, I censored all the cussing parts, not with a beep or silence, but with moaning and other questionable noises instead. I got a few angry texts from him saying that he had to close the radio station for a day to fix things up, and that it was fine to leave a job, but I don't see what compelled you to do this as your final act. Well, maybe if you weren't harassing employees, you would have been fine. Some people just have no idea how to filter themselves, how to control themselves. Some people have zero impulse control and think that it's just okay. Sometimes it's for their own pleasure. Sometimes it's just a power tripping, like a power grab tactic. You're lording over people, and it's just never been cool, even back in the day. And I'm talking way before the early 2000s. But hey, OP, you did your job. You censored the curse words out. Bravo. Include questions from students. About 20 years ago, I studied to become a physics teacher. As part of our curriculum, we had a thing called didactics lab. I almost said diabetics lab. It was a lab where they had some basic devices such as electrostatic machines, pneumatic bench, simple toys, and tools. The drill was that one week we were preparing some experiments and planning a lesson, and the next week actual school children would come and we would present our experiments to them and teach them physics. The lab was run by an older professor who was pretty laid back and a young PhD candidate who was doing everything to show us how important she was. As part of our preparation week, we had to prepare lesson plans, in which we would indicate our aims, our methods, and predicted outcomes. This is what teachers do in regular work, and as my mom was a teacher, I was familiar with the format, so I was simply writing everything as required, including a brief description of the lesson like, teacher presents the experiment and explains the science behind, then answers questions from the students, etc. The PhD candidate thought this wasn't enough and demanded that I write much more detailed plans, including the exact questions the students will ask. I told her it's impossible because I can't predict what questions will be asked. She told me to extrapolate on the basis of the questions asked by students during previous classes. So I did. My next lesson plan looked like this. 1. Teacher switches on electrostatic machine. 2. Girls are screaming. 3. Boys are laughing at the girls. 4. One of the boys throws a paper ball at the girls. His pals laugh. 5. The girls are outraged and demand for a teacher to do something. 6. One of the girls asks, "Do you really want to be a teacher? My mom says their pay is crap." 7. Another boy examines the equipment sitting on the shelf and says, "My neighbor has a basement full of such electric stuff. What do you think you might need it all for?" 8. The teacher tries to conduct the experiment. He's interrupted by a girl announcing, "My auntie's a physics teacher as well, but she lives in another town." 9. One of the boys asks if he can go to the toilet. And so on and so forth. It was like 10 pages long instead of the usual page or two. The PhD candidate was outraged and told me those are stupid questions that no student would ever ask and I should write only the smart questions. I told her that she told me to extrapolate on the basis of previous interactions with the students, and the questions and student behaviors already happened to me at least once. She sent me to the laid-back professor who read my whole plan, chuckling all the way, and I told her that I obviously understand kids already, so I don't have to write my lesson plans anymore apart from one page of brief description of the experiment I planned. The PhD candidate was avoiding me for the rest of the class, but I got a good note in the end. I understand that you can extrapolate to a certain extent what you think certain kids will ask, but a lot of that comes with experience, trying to be ready for certain actual questions that pertain to the lesson. You got to understand that, you're bringing in different people like you guys that are in teacher training. And to these students, that's just something, some kind of an excuse for the switch in their head to be turned on that doesn't allow self-censorship or self-control or anything like that. And they're just going to do all kinds of disruptive stuff. So you do the best you can. The PhD student, yeah, she sounds like she's very important. Pretty sure all you have to do is ask her and she'll let you know. I really had no time for people like that who think they're just so special and, they know more than you do. Boss told me how to organize my tools. I've been a mechanic for nearly 15 years. I'm the lead tech in my shop, and my company just sold recently to a different corporation. And with that came a new boss. A little bit of history about the new boss. He's 22 and the son of one of my older bosses, so everybody suspects a bit of nepotism at play. You think? The older boss was ruthless and a jerk and really put a dent in my confidence about being a mechanic, so I may hold somewhat of a grudge against the family, but I try to do my best to move on and just do my job. The new boss and I have had some serious major issues already in the 3 months that he's been here, but I'm the type of person who can generally put all my feelings to the side if the money keeps ending up on my paycheck. Today, however, that changed. I will admit I'm not the most organized person. I have ADHD, and at 33 years old, I'm still learning to function without the medicine that I weaned off of at 26. My toolbox is normally cluttered, but I keep all my tools in my area or on top of my box. It's a system that works for me. This morning I clocked in and was about to unlock my box when the new boss came up to me and said, "You will not be working on cars today until your box is organized." I said, "My box is organized in the way that it works for me." He shot back with, "Not good enough for me or the company. I need to be able to find tools when I need them, and it needs to look neat and orderly for when corporate comes through." I paused for a second and said, "So you're telling me that you need to be able to find my tools that I've purchased when you need to use them?" I don't remember signing that agreement. He nodded and muttered something about insubordination and that he would be passing off all the work to other technicians until it was completed to his satisfaction. I had assumed he was bluffing until 3 cars came in and all 3 tickets were handed to other techs. I don't have any problem with being told to clean up, and I would have even done it his way, but I had a problem with his tone, and this was messing with my paycheck. So while he was in the back doing tire inventory, I opened the top drawer of my toolbox, spread my arms, and swept every single thing into the drawer that I could. I repeated for the second and third drawer until the top was clean. I used the same process for both of my smaller carts until each one could be closed and locked. Then I clocked out for lunch. I'm currently sitting in my car in the parking lot eating lunch and browsing job listings while watching him try to open all of my drawers to use my tools, because 3 more cars came in and the other tech can't handle 6 at a time. Update: I didn't expect this to blow up like this. Lol. I clocked back in from lunch and the boss asked to speak with me. Apparently he called the district manager, and also his dad, who's a district manager of another district, for advice, and it sounds like they both told him to make it right, and that he could not afford to lose me. I know how it sounds, but it's true. He told me that he just wanted to make a good impression on corporate, who would be coming through in a few weeks, and that he shouldn't have targeted me personally. He paid me for the 3 vehicles he worked on, and I let him know that I was willing to work with him, but if he ever spoke down to me again, there would not be a do-over. That I would leave. He also inquired about buying his own tools. He's not a bad dude, just a little anxious, I guess. I suppose I'll stick around for a little, as the paychecks are worth it, and the drive is convenient, and I have a wife and a house to pay for. As for some of the responses, yes, I am somewhat of a slob with my toolbox, but I also average 10 to 15 cars a day, so I don't always have time or the drive to neatly organize my tools daily. He said he'll be bringing his toolbox from home and calling or texting to ask to borrow before he does borrow. I guess I'm somewhat of a rare mechanic, as I don't mind people borrowing my tools as long as they're put back. I don't know if you can hear that. The cat's sitting here bitching at me. He was sound asleep, and I just sniffed because I feel like I'm going to sneeze. And he does not like that sound for some reason. Anyway, I guess I'm somewhat of a rare mechanic, as I don't mind people borrowing my tools as long as they're put back. Also, the empty toolbox comments. I own all 4 of my toolboxes, so they would be coming with me if I left. Thanks for the support, guys. Seems like maliciously complying paid off for once. So I've never been a official true mechanic. I have worked on vehicles before, but usually things like, I worked for a bus company for a while, and I would do the grunt work. I would help set up for the mechanic, help clean parts, help do things like that, hold big things, haul stuff around the shop, whatever. But for the most part, I was unskilled labor when I got hired there, and I did learn things as I went along. Learned a lot about electrical stuff, so, I could install a stereo system in a school bus, a 50-some passenger Bluebird school bus. You'd have to drill out all the roof rivets on, ceiling rivets on one side of the bus from front to back so that you could run the wiring, drill holes for speakers, things like that. Install wheelchair lifts. The escape hatches in the roofs of buses, they were never there when they came from the factory. The bus company that bought the buses would have to put them in for the school district if they were a requirement by that district or county or whatever, until they became more state and federally mandated. Now I think they all come from the factory that way. Backup alarms, I said wheelchair lifts, vinyl lettering on the sides of buses, things like that. So, and a lot of the buses that came in from Central and South America and things like that, I don't think so much Canada, but a lot of those buses, the handbrake was on the left side of the driver against that wall where there's no door, no access, no nothing. And so we'd have to compromise the firewall and bring the parking brake cable around to the center under the dash. We had to make our own brackets and actually mount the emergency brake handle under the dash between the driver and the stairwell to the door, and then find a way to replug the firewall on the left side so that it was fire rated. Good times. But anyway, I kept my toolbox a little bit messy, but my toolbox was my toolbox, whatever little bit I had. The main mechanic, who had a toolbox as big as my house, he would let me borrow stuff, but I would go to him each time. Listen, can I borrow a couple wrenches and a couple whatever, mostly specialty tools. I mean, I had basic hand tools, things like that, but I didn't have any impact drivers, and I didn't have the nibbler for cutting the sheet metal neatly, for the escape hatches to go in and things like that. So he didn't mind, but I did ask, and I'm pretty sure that was his rule anyway, but I asked him before I even knew. You never reach into another man's toolbox, even on construction sites. My toolbox, my tool belt, any of that stuff is mine. If I needed a pry bar, and there was one, guy had his tool belt hanging on the wall over here, and I needed a pry bar real quick, I would not just go into his pouch and borrow his pry bar without asking him. And, by all rights, I should have had one anyway. There was one in my car, but my car was all the way downstairs. So I waited around for 2 minutes and asked him when he came walking by, and he said, sure. But, it's just common courtesy and respect. Hello. Time to turn over, I guess. The mop. This is a story of ongoing malicious compliance. We have one bathroom at home, and the bathroom has a bathtub and one of those shower handles. So my dad is a splasher when it comes to taking baths. If you go into the bathroom after him, it looks like a flood just went by. Splasher. Oh, God. We're not in a position to question him, as he either yells and throws things or takes it out on my mom by giving her the silent treatment. Sorry, Mom. You married a prince, huh? So he confiscated a mop to wipe the floor after bathing. Confiscated? He stole a mop? But here's the thing. Actually, there's 2 things. He doesn't want anyone to touch, much less use the mop. No, he doesn't wash or dry the mop. It lives in the bathroom. He takes at least 3 baths a day. Really? We end up buying a new mop. Once his mop is finally disintegrated, he will confiscate the new mop and we'll buy a new mop for the house. And on and on. My sister took his mop and washed it with bleach and took it out to dry in the sun. Dad didn't speak to any of us and went to bed without supper. Weirdo. Cue the malicious compliance. No one ever touched his mop ever again, and my siblings and I started hiding the new mop at our neighbors to keep it safe. He still doesn't know about it. But we all know what happens when a wet mop stays wet in a closed, moist environment. The mop has sat in the bathroom collecting God knows what, and he just used it to paint over and splash water after he showers. Yesterday he had visitors from church, so he demanded we clean the house. We cleaned everywhere but the bathroom because we're not allowed to touch the mop. 10 minutes before the guests show up, he freaked out and asked why the bathroom still looks so disgusting. "But Father, you said no one is to touch your mop," my youngest sister replied with the fakest of innocent looks. Funny thing is, Dad didn't even think to just take the smelly mop outside. He had to live through his guests using the bathroom with a moldy, smelly mop. I don't understand. What is a splasher? Like, okay, my grandson's coming up on 2 years old, and, he's a splasher in the tub. He's got toys, he plays in the water, blah, splashing. I get it. I've seen adults that have a hard time getting down into the tub or getting back up because, gravity sucks. And they may splash a little. Two things. One, they'll always clean it up, most of them. Two, if you have a mop specifically for this, use it, clean it, whatever. I just don't understand how you could have a personal mop. This is the other thing. I mean, we just talked about tools and tools being a personal thing. Well, that's fine. But, when your tools are affecting everyone else because they're not neat, they're moldy, smelly, whatever, that's a problem. I mean, fine. You want your own personal mop for your splashy bathroom adventures? Go for it, man. But, you can't jump everybody else's ass if you're not willing to take care of your own stuff. 3 baths a day. That's not healthy. And this is coming from a guy who sells soap. Website down below. We barely need 1 bath a day for most folks in this world. Most people, I do shower daily, and it's mostly just to wake up. There is honestly no need for people to bathe on a daily basis unless they're getting sweaty and, nasty in some way, shape, or form. With that being said, you want to go ahead and use something gentle. You don't want to be scrubbing, and I guess some people have a little bit of germophobia or whatever. You don't need to be scrubbing with the most industrial cleaner there is available. A nice gentle soap will do the job. Some soaps don't even need to actually be sudsing. If you ever used a Castile soap from the, traditionally would have been from the Castile region of Spain, which is made strictly with olive oil. Now, today's variations, you look at Dr. Bronner's and things like that. They call their soap, even their liquid stuff, Castile, and it's all vegetable oils with very tiny amounts of olive oil, if any, because olive oil has gotten crazy expensive. And it's one thing to pay, high rates for an oil that you're going to cook with and ingest, but one that's used on your skin really isn't necessary. Whole other debate. Anyway, 2 things. 1, Dad sounds like he's got a problem, personally, mentally, whatever, with taking 3 baths a day. And with the fact that he's hoarding this mop for some reason. I don't know why. And 2, the moldy, smelly mop. Bleach is a good thing. Also, I will say this. A little bit of powdered laundry detergent and maybe an oxygenated cleaner like OxyClean or something like that. And by the way, you can buy the off-brands of that stuff in 50-pound sacks and you got like Oxy stuff forever. But anyway, you just can't call it OxyClean. But yeah, I mean, that stuff will do wonders with generally daily cleaning of mops and fabric things and like that. I wash my hats, hand wash them with that kind of stuff. We make our own powdered laundry detergent. We've even used that when we used to have the old rope mops. We would use that to put in the bucket and then soak the mop for a little bit and then wash it out just to make sure that they were clean and germ-free and whatever. And then you spread them out on the clothesline so that they can dry properly so that you don't have that mildewy smell all through your house. So do me a favor. If you're going to take 3 baths a day, why don't you go ahead and shop our little shop down here online and at least find a soap that's going to make you smell nice. Something that's pleasant. Something you can enjoy in your bath. And for God's sakes, clean up your mops. I guess. I don't know. As many baths as this guy took, he could have just bathed with his mop and just killed 2 birds with 1 stone, I guess.